So you've heard about systematic reviews, and now we are interested to know what is a systematic review. We can help you with that. The first thing you should know is a systematic review is a type of secondary evidence. Secondary evidence are those research which summarize already published information, right? So they don't go off and collect data from real subjects. They only collect or summarize information that's already been published and free and widely available. So that's a systematic review. So it summarizes already published information. Now, what makes a systematic review so special? Because I'm sure you've heard about systematic reviews being the highest level of evidence. Well, the clue lies in its name, systematic. So systematic review has a systematic, comprehensive, transparent, and reproducible process in its methodology, which means even before I start collecting my data or studies, remember, because it's secondary evidence, I, as a person who's doing the systematic review, have to set out a protocol. A protocol is nothing more than like a recipe for a particular dish that you might cook, just a series of steps. In a systematic review, you have a protocol, and the protocol basically states what is your question, what are you interested in. So remember, in a systematic review, the question has to be very focused question. So you started by saying, this is what I'm interested in looking at. The second thing is you have to state what is your inclusion exclusion criteria, and that it might include things like what type of studies are you interested in. Are you only looking at randomized controlled trials, or are you looking at all quantitative research, randomized controlled trials, clinical trials, cohort studies, case studies, and so on? So you have an inclusion exclusion criteria. Then you also have to stipulate how are you going to search the literature, and that's part of things like keywords, which databases you're going to be looking at, whether you're going to look at gray literature like theses, unpublished information. How are you going to select those studies, which is in, which is out? How are you going to critically appraise? Which tools are you going to use? How are you going to extract this information? How are you going to summarize this data to come up with a final conclusion? So in systematic review, all these series of steps are highlighted or listed even before you start your systematic review. Therefore, even before you do your review, you already have a very well established protocol of how you're going to do it. Now, the other important thing to also recognize is in a systematic review, these series of steps has to be done before you actually go off and do it. So this series of steps is very clearly established. So anyone who's looking in can go, right, I can see how you've gone about accessing the literature, summarizing the literature, the appraising the literature, and so on. So there is a very clear series of steps. And therefore, if a systematic review is done well, so remember, like any research, systematic reviews can also be done poorly. If a systematic review is done well, because of the series of steps which are comprehensive, transparent, reproducible, the bias in a systematic reviews tend to be far lower compared to any other research designs. And that's why a systematic review sits at the top end of the hierarchy. So remember, a systematic review, the type of secondary evidence. 2, it uses a series of comprehensive, transparent, reproducible steps, and therefore its methodology is very, very clear. And because of this reason, a systematic review, if it is done well, has the least amount of bias in it. So now, hopefully, you have a quick idea of what a systematic review is.